This is going to be the first discussion about something in this channel. Today, we are going to talk about quantum physics and consciousness. One of the major findings that have come before us in these days is that double slit particle experiment and quantum superposition has given us the information that consciousness is elementary, or it is necessary for the physical laws to work. So what happens is the results of the experiments depend on the observer. If the observer has seen the results, or if the observer is likely to see the results, the paths that particle takes is knowable to the observer, then the particles behave in orderly form. What means is that it follows physical laws. Otherwise, it won't follow physical laws, and the world becomes a world of possibilities instead of being something concrete, something which the way we see on higher level. So what I'm trying to say is, if we try these things with animals, if we train animals like gorilla, monkey, or any other animals, if we try to train them to see the results and to let us know the output of the results, so can we be sure by doing that those animals are actually affecting the experiments or not? Because what this has to do with whether the experiment is related to human consciousness or not, because all the time there are at least thousands of bacteria around anywhere in the earth, so they don't seem to affect the results of the experiment. So we don't know, but then this is just a guess to check and see whether these things affect the experiment. Like William James said in his book Principles of Psychology, he said that the consciousness is fundamentally compulsory, or it is needed, or it is elementary for the evolution to take place. In the chapter where he was talking about the origins of life and the how the matter is becoming conscious, so there was some gap in those links. Like, it is written in 1890, but they could not understand, and we still cannot understand that how matter is being translated into consciousness. So that theory is has to do with the materialistic view. The idea that matter can become consciousness has many problems, and it is almost proven that matter cannot be conscious. So when we look at the life and how things goes on, we have to take into account these experiments that people have done using quantum physics, and then we come to the conclusion that, or we can come to the conclusion that consciousness is something which is different from physical realm, because it is something that is shaping the shape of the particles, like from the elementary level. How it has been proven that the space is illusion, the time is illusion, and I don't mean it's not there, but then the way it appears to be on the higher level is not what is in the actual reality. So we are not perceiving the things that we are supposed to perceive, or in a way that we are supposed to perceive. But then these experiments have proven that the consciousness is important. Not important, it's like the basic ingredient If that is not there, you cannot determine the results of experiment. That is the one thing. And the other thing is, what is then is consciousness? Then when we read on Wikipedia, it says that the definition of consciousness is the state or quality of awareness, or being aware of external object, of something within oneself. And when we look at the definition of awareness in the Wikipedia, it says that the awareness is the ability to directly know and perceive, to feel, to be cognizant of the events. More broadly, it is the state of being conscious of something. So these two definitions are not helping much. I mean, it is being aware of the external object, something within oneself, is the, I think, function of the consciousness, not that the definition of consciousness. Like being able to run, being able to go to some distance, travel faster, is is the function of car. It's not a definition of car. So, and awareness, they say, is the ability to directly know, is the ability. And they say that it is the state of being conscious of something. So it's not clear, the definition is not clear. There are levels of consciousness, one being higher and one being lower, and people say there are many levels of this consciousness. What separates these levels are, like, if we look at them, there are lower consciousness and there are higher consciousness. Lower consciousness has to do with, they say, reptilian brain. Reptilian brain is fight or flight type brain, something that is primitive, and it is also the lower section of the brain. So angriness, anxiety, fear, these type of things are originated from this brain, and these forces are generally destructive if we look at them. And fear is also, someone would say that fear is protective force. It's not, because it does protect some animal or some people sometimes, but then it is not a protective force. I mean, by the fear of somebody, you would take an action that would lead as an harm to the other person, but in reality, it was less likely that he would harm you. But because you had this fear in your mind, you were inclined to take harmful action against that animal or that person. The higher consciousness is something like love, uh, generosity, being peaceful. So these kind of things are in higher consciousness. Higher consciousness, if we look at the distinct distinct feature of the higher consciousness, we say that it is creative, it is sustaining the world in order, it is spreading life, it is live and let live. So this type of consciousness is what we should have. The expansion from lower consciousness to higher consciousness is possible, and it is through mindful meditation. Some people can have higher level of consciousness than others, some people can be even higher than that, but then the voluntary increasing, the voluntary gain in that consciousness can be only made through mindfulness meditation. So there are some levels in which we think few things are right, or this is the most plausible way of acting for out a problem, but then there are other ways. Suppose if you're angry and destruction is the plausible course of action, in the state of angriness, but then if you are peaceful, you will see the stupidity in your anger. So same things, same environment, same person, but higher and lower consciousness act differently. That comes to the question of answering the ultimate question is who we are. I think we are consciousness, and we are not a, like somebody, some people have proposed that we are a type of antenna. The brain is antenna, and it is functioning as an a receiver, like a radio set, and you cannot know what is the person look like, what is the person, and who is the person by looking at the radio. If we open the parts of the radio, we will see different transistors and different diodes and all this electronic stuff, and kit and speaker, maybe a battery or so, that sort of things, and internal antenna, external antenna going up. So those things, they say, affect, if you change one of those things, then the output will be affected or it will not come. So they say somebody who is not aware of the apparatus or the complication of the machine will simply say that okay, it is this box that is speaking, and this box is doing these things, but actually the box is only receiving the things, the signals that the tower is sending, and there is some person who is speaking in the radio. So this type of, but I'm completely disagree with this thing. What I think is the consciousness is, it has to do something uh, elementary thing, the elementary thing that gives rise to physical laws. And according to me, it happens in a very minute level, a very small level, and from that thing, the the consciousness is something like, I think is mm, in, like in cells, a, a a single cell, and then those cells, they perceive or they create reality, you can say, and from those laws, they see those laws working when they interact with the world, and those possibilities are merged into existence, or those possibilities cease to exist, and only those possibilities which were allowed, or which were observable, or which fit into the physical laws, would come into existence in this place, and from that time the things will go on, and the smallest unit is cell, and then from that level you have animals. These are group of thousands, even say millions of consciousness, and something like, is like a bubble, I guess, that um, one bubble merges into another, and another merges into another, and then is growing like a bubble. So I'm not very clear on this, but then I think this is the best plausible explanation that I can give to myself about me, is the collection of consciousness. And because we see these cells, they are living, and then they die, and then they come back, and then we don't die. So, or maybe that consciousness is being developed, and as it is small, it goes bigger and bigger, it gets better bodies, something like that, maybe. But then we are not the material things, I guess, because if you look at the brain and all, and if you try to dig into it, you will say that it doesn't explain anything. I mean, the logical conclusion would not have you come to this place from where you can say that okay, everything is material. No, you have to be honest. with yourself. And I was also of that attitude, and made some when I did some research, when I went into it, I found that that's not the case. And something is there, something is out there, and that take this thing consciousness, it cannot be explained. And then you have these experiments with quantum physics, like superposition and quantum entanglement. These things, they sort of prove that we as a consciousness are different from the physical world. So that gives a sense of joy to me, that I have this world, or I shape this world in some way, but I don't know. And there are levels that I can know through meditation and through um, mindful meditation, that I can be actively involved in this process. I mean, not passively, as in the sense that I can literally feel the way I am. And this is going to be a best experiment that one can do, is to explore oneself. And so the point that I was trying to make is, the physics should try to determine whether the animal consciousness is different from human one. Because if some study is done on that, in regards to quantum physics, that would be very great to draw some conclusions on. Because um, as I think, there are levels of consciousness and there are groups of consciousness, and then it has to do with something being born in this body, or is it some coincidence that we have, or then a lot of things will be cleared. So that is the discussion that I wanted to make today. Have your comments below. I would like to hear from you what you think about this, and then what are your thoughts on this topic. What what points do you find me wrong? On what points you think that I have well spoken, or how can I improve on this topic and in speaking in general? So please have your comments, and if you would like to subscribe, you can, but then channel is not going to be about the commercial thing. I would also like to hear from you in any form, in comments form, or in audio form, or in video form. So if you have any links, you can send it to me in comments. If you want my email address, I can give it to you. We can have a discussion on that. Okay. So that is for now. Bye.